at AceUp, leading provider of human-centered leadership coaching. What a great pleasure to kick off this LinkedIn Live with you today for an exciting and certainly mind-bending conversation with the first leadership coach in the world, Dr. Carol Kaufman. Thank you all so much for joining us. If you haven't already, please let us know where you're located in the chat section below. We'd love to hear from you. You may also post your thoughts and questions on today's conversation in the chat. We'll leave some time at the end to get to your question. And to celebrate the book launch together, we'll be offering some books today to those of you who ask the best questions. So get to your keyboard. With that said, I am thrilled today to be joined by my dear friend and mentor, Dr. Carol Kaufman. Carol, as many of you know, is the founder of the Institute of Coaching, affiliated with McLean Hospital, the Harvard Medical School. Carol is a strategic advisor at AceUp, a senior leadership advisor at Egon Zehnder, and the co-author with David Noble of the forthcoming book, Real-Time Leadership. Find your winning moves when the stakes are high. Her book comes out on February 21st, and it has already been named by Inc. magazine one of the top 4 business books to read in 2023. Be sure to order yours today. It's available for pre-order on Amazon. You'll find the link in the chat below. With no further ado, Carol, welcome.
Hello, thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody.
Thank you so much, Carol, for joining us. And actually, I would love to start by telling our viewers here a bit more about your journey, and especially the path that brought you here today and to celebrate the launch of the book Real-Time Leadership.
So, are you curious how the idea happened?
I would love to hear.
I remember it vividly. My co-author, David Noble, and I were in New York City at a whiteboard, and we were asking each other, what is it that makes the leaders that we're working with so outstanding? And we just started putting our heads together. This is 5 years now, looking at business strategy, military strategy, every psychological theory you can throw a stick at, and started to just unpack what did we actually think, because we didn't know until we really worked it out.
And so I have here in my notes to learn more about Carol, the person. I have in my notes that one of your hobbies actually taught you about real-time leadership. Do you want to tell us more about this?
Sure. One of the things about real-time leadership is how do you find the space between stimulus and response and different ways of operating in that space. So when I was in school, I was a fencer. And I was like the worst fencer on my team, like by far. So when we had our first match, of course, they put me up against the best fencing, the best fencers in the other team, because I was going to lose anyway. I might as well, take away from the people who are going to win no matter what. So I get on the mat, and to my and everyone's shock, I win. And I win, and by a lot. And so why? I realized a couple of things. Is for me, my peak performance is to be in the moment. And we'll learn about that a little more as one of the 4 stances. But I operated really best in the moment. But what I had to realize as I grew up is not to overly depend on that. So as an aside, so I get back after that first match, and I think I'm going to be a great fencer now. And then I fence against my teammates, and I am yet again the worst fencer on the team. I was always the worst fencer on the team, and I was undefeated on the mat.
It's a fascinating story, because how do you make sense of that?
But it's neurotic. It's some type of neurotic.
It is. And the reason why your book resonated so much, especially in the times we're navigating continuously, which are time of profound change, profound disruption. And as you know well, what motivated actually to write this book is leaders tend to rely on what has worked for them in the past, on what they think is their winning formula for success. Your books aim to change this, and real time leadership is actually about helping leaders succeed when the stakes are high by developing their ability to generate options.
Hmm.
And so their ability, in some other term, to move. And actually, you talk about the move framework in your book to embrace real time leadership. Can you tell us more about the need to generate options and how to do so?
Yes, exactly. So most of the people that we work with are quite successful. Why are they successful? They have great pattern recognition and they're able to like pull on their playbook. And that works really well for yesterday. And it may work well for today, but we keep getting disrupted. So the first part is, we have our default option. What research tells us, particularly research by Rick Snyder and Shane Lopez, is that we need way power as much as we need willpower.
Hmm.
Way power meaning, so when I work, so if you were my client at the moment and you were facing a challenge, I would say we want to have 4 ways forward and 4 paths forward. And I can talk a little bit about the template for those. But it sort of brings in resilience and it gets you past your default because your default helps you win until it doesn't.
Hmm. Hmm. And so, about these 4 ways, to share more about our audience on what is the blueprint to identify the right approach. Before we get into the 4 stance, I would love you to articulate a bit more what is external priorities, internal priorities, interpersonal priorities, and why these dimensions matter.
Okay, great. So the MOVE model, MOVE, we made it an acronym because I have a terrible memory and we wanted to be able to remember it and for you all to remember it in real time. So the M stands for being mindfully alert and the
Mhm.
O is for options generator. So we'll go to M.
Yeah.
Mindful, we understand it's how can you really be noticing what's going on around you. But you also want to be alert, like an athlete is alert and able to be agile. And to do that, okay, so we want to, as Viktor Frankl says, make a space between stimulus and response. We want to make that space bigger and bigger, ideally to live in that space. But okay, now what? I got the space. What do I pay attention to? So here's where we talk about being mindful alert to the 3 dimensions of change, which are inextricable. And some are great at 1 or 2, but we need to develop all 3.
Mhm.
The first dimension of leadership is, what do I need to do? So what are your external demands, which can seem obvious and we can be wrong. So the external demands. Then who do I need to be? Okay, have I evolved enough and devoted enough time for my inner development that under high stakes, I'm able to regulate my emotions, access my purpose? And then the third dimension is interpersonal. How do people need me to relate? Not how I need to relate to them, how they need to relate, to feel heard and included. So those are the 3 dimensions of change. What do I need to do? Who do I need to be? And how do I need to relate?
I think this concept is very, very, very powerful indeed to actively think about the connection between the external priorities, the goals, with your inner self, your values, your strengths, and ultimately, as you said, how do you need to show up with people to indeed drive alignments between the 3 dimensions.
Yes.
So tell us more about these 4 ways, these 4 stances to find the right approach.
Okay, so you can think of this now as you got the 3 dimensions of leadership and you have the 4 stances. All right. And in the book, we actually go into like incredible detail on each one of them, like an operating manual. So let me tell you about the 4 stances. So, first of all, we have 4 main reflexes: fight, flight, freeze, and befriend. And many of us kind of naturally default to one style or the other. Some people typically always lean in or they always lean back for data. So we need to be aware what's our default. And then how can we expand it? Because again, we're looking for 4 pathways forward. So I'll tell you the story of sort of my very first experience with this. So this works for you as a leader and also as a coach. So the four stances are lean in and truly engage. It can be with enthusiasm or a little edgy. Lean back is look at the data, get up on the balcony, avoid conflict if you can. Then lean with. That's really people first and the nurturing part first. And then don't lean at all, which is the hardest, which is something's thrown at you and you choose not to catch it. Okay, so those are the four stances. So now I'm coaching Max, and this is spelled out in the book. I'm coaching Max. He's the COO. The CEO is a former friend of his, and she has just turned into a horrible boss. She is micromanaging him. She even took $10 million of his private funds for a pet project of hers. It was so bad that he said, I'll only schedule time with her at the end of the day so I can book out of here, go home, and my partner's waiting for me with a martini. So now he's doing this. She's micromanaging me this, and I'm just joining him, right? Like, let's really figure out a way that we can like help you. So what could you be doing? And then he adds, and then it's so weird because she suddenly starts confiding in me secrets, things I shouldn't even know. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is so manipulative. And I'm about to just go in. And then I'm like, practice what you preach, Carol. I've caught that lean in energy. So this is really important for us. If your client or your business partner is very lean in, and so are you, be careful. So what I did is I forced myself to lean back and think. So I said, I call him Max. I'm like, Max, let's go up on the balcony. What do you think might be going on a bigger scale that is impacting her behavior? And then he was able to talk about an activist member of the board, different things with the press, that she was truly being crushed. And then when he could look back, he sort of calmed down a little bit. Then I tried to practice don't lean. So for a moment, I just was silent, which is a challenge for me. And then this thought just hit me, which is what don't lean is all about, to create that like in the shower or running moment. And I was actually afraid to ask him this question, but I went, so Max, you tend to get your way at the end. You actually got your 10 million back. Why is this even bothering you? So that was really fascinating because he was able to see that he was being triggered. I was afraid he was going to feel really criticized, but happily he didn't. Then, but it wasn't settled yet. So then I thought about, okay, what about leaning with? So he and they used to be good friends. So I said, what if at the end of the meeting with her, your goal was for her to actually feel better? That just opened up something. It made him remember that they had been good friends, and he was able to pull himself out of the vortex of being unhappy.
Thank you for walking us through this example. In your book, you actually break down these four stances blueprint, and really it was a breakthrough to me because it was clear and actually simple in the approach, but really mind-bending. When you ask yourself actively as a CEO, as a leader, as an HR leader, should I lead in? Should I lean back and be analytical man? Should I lean with and facilitate, this collaborative approach? Or should I simply don't lean? Because leaning might actually hinder others' ability to show up and take ownership of the situation. So these, very concise, clear way to break down the four stance to embrace the right leadership style is absolutely game changing. If you're an HR leader, if you're a coach, get your hands on that blueprint. It is really, really changing the way you approach even coaching.
Yes.
That is really fascinating. And you actually mentioned at the beginning the importance to identify your stance. So quick tips on how do I identify my go-to stance?
Okay. Well, think what you do when you're really stunned by something or something really, you're triggered. So if somebody, okay, so let's imagine you're in a meeting, a public meeting, and somebody sneers at you and they're just like, ugh, Will, right? At that moment, what do you do? Do you want to like get in their face? Do you want to run away? Do you want to find out what's going on with them? Or are you able to just take it in stride and not be impacted? So if you think of that kind of thing like that, what's your instinct? Um, and the other thing that I wanted to mention is this all scales as well.
Mm,
So you can start out with the leader, and this can sort of scale out. So, for example, leading with on a scale basis, it's like leading with your culture and inclusion. That's leaning with. Leaning in. That could be our numbers. So for all of these, we're talking about this in terms of the individual leader or the individual coach, but you can think about this at an organizational level as well, because a lot of you are in charge of your culture. And all of this kind of can be embedded inside of that.
mm, mm. I have to say that I would probably be of the leaning type, but
I'm
but I heard,
stunned.
but I heard it's quite frequent among leaders, and but what is actually really eye opening in the book as a CEO is to think of all potentially the cons that leaning in can have in a
Mm,
meeting situation. While we have a tendency to consider that leaning in is the way to go, thinking actively of other approaches that can better fit the situation is really eye opening. And there is
mhm,
something else in your book, and I'll be brief on that point because I want to get to the questions of our audience. There are many, but there is a part of the book that also profoundly resonated with me because you talk about knowing what to do, but also knowing who you want to be.
mm,
And especially in high stakes situation, who do you want to be in these moments? How do you want to show up in these moments? How do you want people to be influenced by your being in these moments? And this can be also a way to think of what will be my 10 out of 10. What will be the best version of myself that I would like to be there? And thinking about my strengths and maybe other things that I need to get better at. And thinking that way to prioritize the competencies that I want to develop as a leader. And again, this question of bringing together what's to do with who I want to be is for me something that really resonated.
mhm. Thank you. I remember when that hit me. It was New Year's, and you know how you do the what am I going to do? And it's always like the same things. I thought, okay, I'm so sick of this. It lasts 6 weeks, it's gone. Then it hit me like, well, what if I thought about who do I want to be?
Mhm.
I asked myself that question. I want to challenge you all to do it. I know Will has, is to ask yourself 80 times a day for a couple days that question. Because if you want it to be there for you when you're in a press conference and suddenly you discover that the product you're about to launch has just been launched by Amazon the day before, who do you want to be? Well, you better have done the reps. So ask yourself that. And someone cuts you off in your car, who do you want to be? Someone hands you a report and it's not as good as you want, who do you want to be? And in a way, that split second, who do you want to be, can give you just enough space so that you can then start choosing how you want to respond.
Beautifully said. We have many questions to go through. Carol, are you ready?
Yes, I am, I think.
um, so we have actually a first question that you can see on your screen. What is one step you can take today to begin practicing real-time leadership?
Okay, so the first one, of course, is who do I want to be right now? The other one is when you think you have something to do, just ask yourself to name it. Like, what is it that I really am trying to do right now? You're having a team meeting, you have to make a decision. You think, okay, I need to make a decision. What do I need to do? Well, do you? Or do you need to help your team feel more empowered and included?
Mhm,
So just think like just a second. Is this really what I want to do? Is this really who I want to be? Is this
mhm.
really how I want to be relating? So very quick, because that's what real time is. Real time is, I can't snap. I still can't snap. Thank you. Thank you. Real time is that. That.
Perfectly framed. I think we couldn't be more concise and clear. Other question, and that of course relates to our time. Actually, another one just came up. As it relates to the four stance, how might our biases come into play? And how do you suggest leaders work around those biases when attempting to practice the stances?
I think I paid that person to ask. So I'm going to back up for a
Yeah.
moment. So M was to be mindfully alert. O is for the options generator. V is for your vantage point. E is to engage and affect change. But back to vantage point. So if you are going to be seeing something clearly on a 10 out of 10 basis, which then would impact your stance, how do you ask yourself, am I seeing clearly? Do you have on rose colored glasses, charcoal colored glasses? Are you nearsighted? Are you farsighted? Do you need high def? Will grainy do? And what about the unconscious bias? What about the things that you don't know you don't know? So a lot of the book is about finding out how do you know what you don't know and how to know it, or to identify what are the biases that can block me. And I think that's very, very important because somebody could, let's say, give you a look and you want to lean in and you're like, wait a minute, this person may be feeling excluded and they don't need me to lean in. They need me to lean with them to bring them in. So I think that's a very, very important question. How our viewpoint is. The other piece of it is 75% of small business failure is due to over optimism. So you may be going for the lean in stance because you're so optimistic, but maybe you better lean back and get a big overview and do your due diligence. So they're very much intertwined.
Hmm. Excellent question. And I think we have our first winner of your book, Carol, because we're definitely going to send your book to this person who asked an amazing question. I think we have another question, and indeed that relates to, of course, navigating real-time leadership in the hybrid world of work. Does working in a hybrid model makes real-time leadership easier or more difficult?
Yes.
Tell
I
me
think,
more.
I think there's I think on one hand, when you can literally see yourself, there's a way that you might sort of have a moment that you can sort of pause because you can see yourself. I think there's ways that when you're on Zoom, if you train yourself, you can really be reading facial expression. So I'd say in some ways it's harder and in some ways it's easier. Um, so I think I'm a little bit stumped to go beyond that. Well, what do you think?
I definitely think that with real time leadership in the hybrid world of work, it's also about really embracing being human. And of course, this relates to the
Yeah.
philosophy we have about human centered leadership. Because as you know, the boundaries between life, career are very thin in the hybrid world of work. And being able to adapt to the moment
Mm.
is of the utmost importance. And as you said very well, there is maybe cues that you have to train yourself to see, but that are maybe sometimes more difficult to appreciate in a
Mhm.
Zoom environment compared to if I'm in the same room than you. And
Mhm.
there are many other cues that I can capture. So I think these questions, who I want to be, uh,
Mm.
are even more important probably when you have to adapt to the complexity of this hybrid world of work.
Yeah, and voice tone. I think
Yeah.
really tuning into the voice tone of other people, I think can be giving you a lot of cues of their experience and then how to adjust.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Marshall Goldsmith said something really beautiful about your book. And let me actually read it because I think it will resonate with people if they need another reason to know why they should read Real Time Leadership.
Mhm.
Marshall said the following: while many coaches use the term CEO coach, very few have actually worked with top CEOs in major companies. Carol and David have decades of experience in working with great leaders
Mm.
from incredibly diverse organizations. Real-time leadership gives you a fascinating behind closed doors view of what executive coaching is really like, based upon their invaluable experience and wisdom. The MOVE framework detailed in this book has been very helpful to me in my own coaching practice and my own life, which is not a small testimonial to get.
Mm.
Marshall. Very few people can hire Carol and David for one-on-one coaching. Thanks to this book, we can all learn from them, immediately apply what we have learned, both at work and at home. I really appreciate him saying work and home together, which also relates to our previous discussion. This book has helped me. I'm sure it can help you as well. Carol, any last word that you want to share to our audience about why they should embrace real-time leadership?
Well, I see in the chat, there's also the connection to level 5 from Jim Collins. And I think we all want to be the best that we can be. And a way to be a real-time leader or a level 5 leader is, how do you make the space in the moment for you to choose what to do, how to be, how to relate, and then become a force for good, and then figure out how to scale that in your family, with your team members, or in your organization. But make this space so you can choose and rise above your ego.
Very well said. Thank you so much, Carol, for sharing your wisdom with us on this LinkedIn Live with our community of HR leaders and coaches. Thank you all for joining us. Once again, don't leave without checking the link below so you can pre-order your copy of Real-Time Leadership. And also, don't forget to follow AceUp on LinkedIn. Look up for our next events and looking forward to our next human-centered conversation. Carol, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.